So the Tekno EB48 2.2 just came out recently. It comes as a kit. It features all the updates and revisions that the Nitro buggy does, and we've got one built up and ready to check out. And we also have a 2.1 eBuggy to compare the new one against. After that, we're gonna go out to the track and drive it, and we'll bring along the Nitro buggy because we never got to drive it before. Now for the new 2.2, it's a pretty straightforward build. It's a kit that comes with none of the components or tires or wheels, but it does include the body. Now we built ours up using the box stock setup, and there's no other option parts on the car other than the electronics we used. Now we've got a 155T ProTech servo for the steering, an X-Run XR8 Plus ESC, and then the 2200 kV motor. Those two pieces came as a combo, and then we've added a 16-tooth pinion. For the battery, this is the 6400 milliamp hour Shorty 4-cell, and for this battery box you can adjust that battery backwards and forwards a lot, or just use a full-size stick pack if you want, but we're gonna use the Shorty. And then the last thing that we did to the car is we just had the body custom painted by Marshall Patton over at Rad Painting, and it turned out really dang nice. Now for the updates on the 2.2, the electric version is going to receive all the revisions that the Nitro 2.2 received as well, with probably the biggest update being the lower drivetrain. So the lower drivetrain is going to start with the new transmission housings, which drop down about 2 millimeters. It's pretty hard to tell, but there is a little bit more space around the outdrive and the shock tower, where you've got a little bit of gap there, where on the 2.1, this space is almost non-existent. The steering spindles, they're gonna also be lowered 2 millimeters. The rear hubs, they're also lowered 2 millimeters, and they actually have 2 holes, so you can go -2 or up 2. Now, because the drivetrain's been lowered 2 millimeters, there's also new updated rear arms where they have provided clearance in the center for that drive shaft to sit a little bit lower. The front arms already had that kind of notch spacing in the center. Well, now it's present on the rear arms. The suspension arms also have an update where they're using longer suspension bushings. So the bushings where the hinge pin goes through, the bushings are just longer, so they've been elongated, so they use and fill up the entire material of the arm, so they shouldn't wallow out as fast. They're just gonna be more durable, and hopefully the arm lasts longer. And that's gonna be at the inner hinge point. The rear drive shafts have also been updated, and if you compare the new car to the old car, the pivot point has been shifted back into the arm. So basically, we've got a longer axle and a shorter bone. Another big update is going to be the split design shock towers on the front and rear, and these shock towers are supposed to be better for low traction conditions or bumpy conditions. You can still use the original shock towers if you want to, it's just a tuning aid. The shock standoffs are also updated. The old design was a one-piece standoff that used a nut to capture onto the shock tower. The new ones use a 4mm screw on the backside, but it's gonna be a lot more durable. And then inside the shocks, there are new shock pistons and shock guides that are supposed to make the shock smoother under load. The steering's been updated as well with the Ackerman plate. That's going to be a little bit updated over the original 2.1, and then the steering plates at the carriers are also going to be a slightly different design. Basically, they've made it so the turnbuckle is going to be longer to help smoothen out the steering. And then the last really big update on this car is going to be the sway bar bushings. So these bushings basically will allow you to adjust the deadband, the space between the bushing and the sway bar, where Tekno is saying the more deadband, or almost like slop in between those parts, the more slop there is, the better it's going to be for bumpy, low traction conditions. It's going to be less reactionary, where you're going to want that deadband to be tighter for high traction conditions, which makes sense. And now on the 2.2, you can adjust it. Pretty slick, and it's a lot of updates that you can buy separately and put on the old car, but now it comes standard on the 2.2. So we're gonna get this puppy charged. We're gonna go charge our batteries for our starter box and our nitro stuff, and let's go to the track. So what you don't see here is we actually came out yesterday just to get a little bit of drive time and some practice on this layout. I'd never driven it before, and to give each car a little bit of a shakedown.
So, the car feels really dang good, man. It's pretty aggressive in the front end. Yesterday we moved the battery back and we reset the ride height and the camber because the car had started to settle a little bit more. It was too low. We also rotated the tires. We're using the GRP tires, the Sonics, and those tires are really cheap, so they're good to buy, and I've used them a lot personally, and they never come unglued, the pre-mounts, but they are not hooking up as well as the J-Concept stackers, which are on our Nitro car, which we drove a little bit yesterday too. So we'll try the stackers on the electric car here in a little bit, but after moving the battery back, the car is a whole lot more stable, and it's not so aggressive in the front end. I dropped down the dual rate on the steering too, like 5%. Which helped a bit because it was really whipping around hard in some of the tight 180s. But the car feels really good. It's super stable. It's jumping and landing really well. It's pretty confidence inspiring over the jumps, and it doesn't seem to be bottoming out unless I really huck it. I think we got a problem. It looks like our pin popped out, and it doesn't look like the button head screw here was tightened down all the way. Oh, look at it, it's loose. Chris, you built this? Did you use Loctite? So we don't have any more pins, but luckily we do have our Nitro buggy. Whoa, look at that Black Widow down there.
Oh God.
You see that thing?
I hate it.
These are the stackers in green.
So considering how dusty and loose the track is when it's not watered, the cars overall performed really well. They both did. And then even with some minor tinkering, we were able to improve on that quite a bit. Now we didn't really tinker on the Nitro, but we did do a little bit with the electric by just moving the battery and then dialing back the dual rates. With the Nitro, it was running a little lean out here, and we probably just need to dial back some of that power, maybe a little expo in the trigger, and dialing down the dual rates also would help out. But overall, by default, both of these cars, they just have tons of steering. It's a good place to start. They jump and land really excellent out there. They hit the jumps and the bumps really well, and they're just both impressively stable and manageable in these less than ideal low traction conditions. They just handle it really well. As long as you have the right tires for the conditions and then a smooth trigger finger, they're just really fast cars, and they're definitely recommended. So guys, go check out the Tekno cars and everything else we talked about in this video with our links down below. I'm Brett from AMain Hobbies, and thanks for watching.